What's going on, everyone? Thanks for joining us. Today, we're going to get into our race day updates for round number 8 at Washougal. So as always, we have quite a few things to get into today. We're going to start off with our injury updates. We have an update on Chance Hymas. There's some drama between Garrett Marchbanks and Club MX. There's a bunch of riders that are going to be returning to racing soon, so we're going to cover that as well. And then, of course, we're going to cover the storylines of the top guys that are already racing this weekend. And lastly, we're going to talk about the track, the weather, and the schedule. So first up, 250 injury updates. RJ Hampshire will be returning to the series soon, but he is not going to be able to race with us this weekend. Sounds like he will probably return for Unadilla after the break. Another rider that will be returning from injury soon is Cody Schock. So Cody had surgery on his wrist. He did go down during the Pro Motocross Series, and he hasn't been able to return since. He's actually on the entry list for this weekend. However, I don't expect him to participate, but he very well could be returning for Unadilla as well. Another guy who's on the entry list but I don't actually expect to participate is Cameron McAdoo. Sounds like he's had some positive scans lately on his shoulder and he's feeling good. Looks to be returning to the bike soon. If I had to guess, he'll probably make a push to try to return for the start of Super Motocross. Now, as far as Chance Hymas goes, he is also on the entry list, but I do expect him to participate. It sounds like he had a pretty bad ankle sprain. Personally, I was really concerned about his knee, so I'm glad that his ACL is still doing okay. Probably going to be a rough weekend for him pain-wise, but it sounds like he's going to tough it out and race with us this weekend. As far as everyone else, there's still a huge list of 250 riders that are out. No real updates on any of them, so I'm just going to go ahead and skip ahead. Moving on to the 450 class, Justin Barcia, Cooper Webb, Eli Tomac, Ken Roxon, Jet Lawrence, Derek Drake, and Jerry Robin are all out. Not nearly as many riders out in the 450 class as the 250. None of those guys will be returning this weekend, but I do expect Webb, Barcia, and maybe even Roxon to return at the next round in Unadilla, and Eli Tomac to probably return shortly behind them. Moving on to our top rider storylines. So at the front of the 250 class, we obviously have Haiden Deegan. We all saw what he did last weekend. While he didn't get the numbers on paper that he probably would have liked, he had a pretty incredible ride, especially in that second moto when he was down on the start, and he came all the way back to salvage a second place on the overall for the day. Now, while I don't always agree with everything that Haiden says, one thing I do respect about him is he always says what's on his mind and he's not afraid to speak how he feels. I don't really think that Chance did anything wrong in that race, but it is cool to see that Haiden at least will speak his mind whether he's right or wrong. I don't think it's the best strategy to just go around making enemies for no reason, but it could make things interesting down the road. Either way, I don't think it's going to matter this weekend. Haiden absolutely dominated here last year. He went 1-1 in a commanding fashion from behind. He actually passed and took the lead, so really looking for him to probably do the same. He's been way more dominant this year than last year, and he totally destroyed everyone here last year. I look for Haiden to have a nice rebound week this weekend and probably go 1-1 and continue to extend his points lead. Now, his next closest competitor in the championship is Levi Kitchen, since Chance had a rough weekend last weekend. And Levi is extremely local to Washougal. However, he's been pretty vocal that he doesn't necessarily feel all that comfortable at the track. He did say that he could literally ride his bike from his house to the track and go riding, so I'm sure he has plenty of laps around Washougal. One thing that is encouraging is that when we went to the Seattle Supercross, the hometown crowd pushed him to an absolutely killer ride. It was one of the largest win margins that we've seen in a lot of years, and he rode really well, so it's kind of a breakout ride for him in Supercross. It would be really cool to see him have something like that here in Washougal. Not something I'm expecting, but maybe that hometown crowd can push him to another good result. As far as Tom Vialle, he's coming off another rough weekend. He was in a pretty good spot until he went down in the mud, and then that whole second moto just pretty much fell apart on him. Hard to say exactly how he's going to handle Washougal. He raced here last year, but he crashed in moto number 1 and DNF'd, and then did not start the second moto. It would be cool to see him get up there and challenge Haiden and these other guys, but at this point, I'm just not expecting it. He is only 3 points behind Levi, so I do expect him to at least try to get up there and score some points, but I definitely think that everybody knows that it's Haiden's championship at this point, so I really don't expect him to do anything too risky. Moving on to Chance Hymas, as I had mentioned earlier in the video, he should be racing with us this weekend. He's still 4th in the points, he's not that far out, so he could potentially rebound, but I look for him to just try to get through this round and score some points, and then head into the 2-week break to try to heal up and get that ankle going good again. Behind Chance, we have his teammate Joe Shimoda, who is coming on strong at the end of the season as per usual. It is kind of frustrating to see Joe always come on strong at the end of the championship, and you have to wonder what if he ever started off strong. But at the very least, it is nice to see him coming on strong at any point. It would have been even more frustrating to see him just not be able to be successful on the Honda. I do consider him a podium threat for the rest of the season. It'd be really cool to see him get up there and get some more moto wins. I wouldn't count him out for that at all. And I do think he could potentially do that this weekend, but I definitely think this is Hayden's weekend. It seems like the main thing with Joe is probably just starts. If he can get off the start, he can win. So if Joe rips a start, watch out. And behind Joe, we have Ty Masterpool. So Ty obviously got off to a rough start to the season. He crashed, didn't score any points in the first moto, and he's all the way up to 6th in the points. So he's had some really good rides, some moto wins, an overall win. I was skeptical about the last minute switch to the 250, and it's great to see Ty making it work. I'm not really sure what to expect out of him this weekend. He had a pretty good start in moto number 1 last weekend, and then he just kind of held his own and even faded a little bit. Washougal doesn't really strike me as the type of track that he would do overly well at, but he has shown that he has the speed and that he's determined, so definitely don't count him out. One thing I did want to highlight about Ty that I thought was pretty incredible was he was absolutely laid out in that first turn crash in moto number 2, and he was by far the last person to get up, and he rode all the way up to a 10th place finish to salvage an 8th overall on the day. So while it was kind of a bad weekend for him, he still got an 8th overall, and he's still riding pretty well even when he's not riding that good when compared to the rest of the season. Moving on to the 450 class, up front we obviously have Chase Sexton, and it seems like he has pretty much everybody covered. It seems like his intensity is a little bit lower at the start of the moto because he's just not really stressed out about being able to close the gap if there is one. It definitely seems like it's Chase's championship to lose, and I don't see him losing it if he's riding conservative like he has been. Don't get me wrong, these other guys are still really good and they can beat him, but it's going to be really hard to do that, especially when Chase is not pushing it to his absolute limit like he's used to. As far as Hunter Lawrence goes, he's clearly the second best guy, but he's still going to need help to win this championship, and he's probably going to need help to win an overall, whether that's Chase getting a bad start, tipping over, having a bike problem, whatever the case may be. Hunter only needs one bad moto out of Chase and he can definitely take home an overall win. I would love to see that for Hunter. He's riding great, and he was the championship points leader for a significant amount of time, so it feels like he does deserve an overall win this season, but I'm just not sure he's going to get it. Behind him, we have Justin Cooper, who is arguably starting to solidify himself as the 3rd best rider in the field right now. It's interesting to see that we have 2 rookies that are basically always inside the top 3. We'll have to keep an eye on Justin Cooper because depending on how many more podiums he gets the rest of the season could determine on whether or not he's able to get a star ride next year or not. We know Eli Tomac and Cooper Webb are returning, and it sounds like his job might be on the chopping block just because of budget reasons, but I know that it's in his contract somewhere that depending on how many podiums he gets, he automatically renews his contract regardless. Now, what that exact number of podiums is, we don't know. We just know that he's hunting podiums to try to basically force Star to re-sign him. So if you see J. Coop out there really forcing an issue just to try to get on the podium, now you know why. Right behind J. Coop, we have Aaron Plessinger. So I'd really like to highlight what Aaron is doing. It's pretty incredible. He had a really solid motocross championship last season. He scored points in every single moto. He was pretty much always inside the top 5. And this year he's doing the exact same thing. He's right there. He almost won that moto in Hangtown, and he's just riding really well. While he hasn't been inside the top 5 every single moto, he's been scoring points every single moto, and he's right there, 4th in the championship, rock solid. He's definitely just a hair off of being a championship contender, but he has that championship-like consistency. It would be really cool to see AP rip a moto win. It feels like he deserves it after that performance in Hangtown. I don't think that's going to happen this weekend, but if you give AP a good start, you never know what he could do with it. Behind Aaron Plessinger, we have the last guy who I believe still thinks he can get on the podium, and I definitely think he can, which is Jason Anderson. We've seen Anderson have some good rides and show some good speed. He even was fastest qualifier last weekend, so definitely do not count him out. He's definitely a top 5 guy, and he could get on that podium, so keep your eye on Anderson. Behind him, we have Dypan Ferrandis, who to me it really feels like this is probably his last season. I'm not against Dylan racing. I love seeing him out there, but I do think that he's not performing to the level that he would like to see. He's definitely riding good, and he's on a privateer bike, so nothing to be ashamed of, but he's definitely a little bit off. He hasn't even been able to leapfrog Jet in the points yet, and I do believe coming into the season, a part of him felt like he might be a championship contender. So he's pretty far off of that. If he does plan on retiring, hopefully he can let us know before the season's over so we can really appreciate his last ride. But either way, it's cool to see Dylan out there doing his best. Look for him just outside the top 5. Another guy I want to shout out in the 450 class is going to be Malcom Stewart. He's right there around 8th every single weekend. Just collecting his paycheck, nothing to be ashamed of, riding strong, but not really anything too flashy. As far as his teammate Christian Craig, not quite the same thing can be said. He got off to a really rough start to the season, and now he's coming on strong. He looked really good last weekend. He was right there outside of that lead group of guys, kind of in his own little no man's land. Christian's future in motocross and supercross racing is definitely up in the air. He will not be with Husqvarna next year, and we don't really know where he's going to go. I know he wants to keep racing, and I would love to see him keep racing, so going to be interesting to see how he finishes off the season and what kind of ride he can secure for next year. And then I also just want to give a quick shout out to Phil Nicoleti, who is now all the way up to 11th in points. He's absolutely killing it. It's his final season. He jumped up to the 450 after Supercross. He missed a few rounds with that knee injury, and he is still 11th in points. Now we do have some pretty interesting drama in the 450 class. A couple of guys dropping their team mid-season, the first of which being Colt Nichols, which I've been kind of drawing attention to this for a while now. We knew he was going to be going to HEP Suzuki, but now it's officially been announced that Colt has left Beta and joined HEP Suzuki. He will not be lining up with us this weekend, but look for him at the next round in Unadilla. Additionally, Garrett Marchbanks did basically the same thing. Now we knew he's going to pro circuit next season. I'm still not sure how I feel about that, but either way, that's what we knew he was going to do. But we saw what happened last weekend. He pretty much just pulled off the track and was like, I'm not going back out. It sounds like he was feeling something on the bike he didn't like, and the team thought his bike was okay. So there's definitely a conflict there. Now, whether or not that was the straw that broke the camel's back or not, either way, it was announced this week that Club MX and Garrett Marchbanks are parting ways effective immediately. Now, this poses an interesting problem for Garrett because he raced 250 Supercross and he's been racing 450 Motocross, so he's kind of right there on the bubble for Super Motocross points in either class, and he kind of needs to go out there and finish off the series. Now, he is not on either entry list, so he will not be racing with us this weekend, but it'll be interesting to see how he handles this 2-weekend break and if he can somehow find a way to sign up for either class come Unadilla. With 3 more rounds, he could definitely get himself in a reasonably good position going into SMX. So be curious to see what he does there, and I'd be curious to see if he's on a pro circuit bike for Super Motocross. Kind of similar to what we saw Cooper Webb do last season. Now, as far as the track itself, it's a very interesting and beautiful track. If you haven't been there, it's really good for the spectators. Not that great for the riders. There's a lot of shadows, so it makes it challenging. It sounds like they're trying to get a little bit away from the hard packed type of track that they're known for. They did bring in some sand. How much sand is kind of unclear so far. Going to be interesting to see how deep they rip the track and if there ends up being a lot of ruts or if it stays kind of hard packed and fast. The riders have complained in the past that it's hard to pass at this track, so it'll be interesting to see if they're taking that into account and trying to make more lines for more passing. Personally, I think that would be really cool to see. Also, last year they did have multiple gate issues, so hopefully they got that all sorted out. I'm sure they did. It's been a whole year, but just keep an eye out for that. As far as the schedule this weekend, it is a little bit different, kind of weird. We're going live on NBC once again, so for better or for worse, 450s will be going first, and we're also starting a little bit earlier than usual. We're going to be starting at 12 p.m. local time, so 3 Eastern. That's also going to bump up Race Day Live a little bit. It should be coming on around 10 a.m. local time, which would be 1 o'clock Eastern. So if you guys want to watch Race Day Live, then make sure you tune in around that time. Now, as far as the weather, there is plenty of shade like I had mentioned, but it is going to be a pretty warm one. However, the weather is kind of interesting. The hottest part of the day doesn't come until much later in the day. So the high temperature for the day is 96, but it's only going to be 81 degrees at the start of racing. And even at the start of the last moto, which is 250 moto number 2, it's still only going to be 91. Now I understand 91 degrees is still really hot. I'm just saying that it's not the hottest part of the day. I'm sure that these guys are still going to be pushing the limits, and the hottest part of the day will be around moto number 2 when you're already hot and tired. So look for fatigue to play a little bit more of a role than usual. It's going to be significantly hotter than it has been the last few rounds. Whatever ends up happening, it should be some good racing. I'm excited. I'm sure you guys are as well. Thank you for watching this video, and I will see you guys in the next one. What's up, everyone? We're giving away a brand new Fly Formula helmet. I personally use this helmet, and I love it. It's super safe. It's got lots of cool features, like the little bendy visor that also breaks away really well. It also has the Rheon technology that is very good at absorbing energy when you crash. It's easy and free to enter. If you're viewing on Instagram, just click the link in the bio. And if you're viewing on YouTube, click the link in the description. Everything is pretty straightforward. And we're going to be running this giveaway all the way till the end of Pro Motocross. After the season finale in Ironman, we'll draw one lucky winner. So enter now before it's too late.